I think one of the stats that you gave me when we spoke a few weeks ago had to do with the generational transition when it comes to the raw data. And you said something like 2 or 3% of companies actually make it to a fourth gen.
3% of companies make it to the fourth generation. 13% of all companies make it to the third generation, and only 3% make it to the fourth generation. So the vast majority fail. And they fail on the generational transitions.
And so tell me a little bit about your personal experience with that generational transition. And if you would, we have some cool photos here too. I would love to get your commentary on those as we click through them as well.
Yeah, for sure. So the business went through a couple of generational transitions. So in 2005, when my grandfather passed away, the business transitioned to my dad and my uncle. They were the only siblings active in the business. And that the business then ran from 2005 when my grandfather passed away to 2016 when my brothers and I bought the business. My dad and my uncle were running the business, generally large-scale single-family development, higher end. I would still call them middle market homes, but they were building homes for doctors and lawyers and kind of people that could afford a really nice house, but they weren't building $6 and $8 million houses for people. They were still kind of everyday houses. In and around Boston, mostly on the North Shore. The next transition, so Gen 1 to Gen 2, frankly, was brought about by death, right? Which is not uncommon. Gen 1 generally doesn't voluntarily transition a business early. It's very, very unique if that were to happen. So my grandfather passed away. It was circumstances that transitioned the business. My dad and my uncle had to kind of sort out all the issues around that and run the business over the ensuing, decade. When my brothers and I came in, we worked in the business. I came into the business in 2000. My brothers shortly thereafter, or my brother Greg shortly thereafter, and then Mark. Mark worked outside the business for a while. He's recently come in. But the transition from Gen 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, however you want to look at it, was much more planned. It was a transaction. It was a buyout. My dad and my uncle are still here, right? It wasn't brought about by death or disability or divorce or kind of any of these other negatives that cause chaos in family business transition. So when you have the ability to really plan a transition and understand how are we going to transition control of the business? How are we going to transition ownership of the business? How are we going to make sure that the assets of the business are protected as they transition across these generations, especially if there's shifts in business strategy, which was very clear when my brothers and I were coming in that we weren't going to continue building the single family homes. We had a book of business that we were going to wrap up and contracts that we were going to make good, but our focus had shifted completely to large scale multifamily development. We saw tremendous opportunity there. We really saw the future of our company in that direction, and we went hard after it. And really, what I'll say about the generational transitions is they're going to be there's a direct correlation to the amount of preparation, the amount of counsel, the amount of conversations, the amount of transparency that you put into that, and how smooth that transition is going to go. Mm-hmm. That is where family businesses fail, is on the generational transitions. Expectations are unspoken, expectations are unclear, and really, the more you can talk and the more you can together plot that course and that transition in a way that works for everyone, the better off you're going to be. And we were very lucky to work with my dad and my uncle, who wanted to transition it, had a very clear plan in place for what they wanted and what they needed. And we were able to work within that framework to do something that worked for everyone.